I share these because it took me a long time to sort of figure these out for myself, and now that I do, I'm a lot less bashful about asking people for help. But people love talking about themselves, so find people who have a complementary expertise, get them talking. And from that, they're going to want to show off, they're going to want to be the hero, they're going to want to help you. So get people moving in this direction, and I think, as I constantly am surprised, you'll be surprised who you know and how close you are to different people that might be a co-founder, might be an investor, might be whatever. And also remember, you're networking with folks. By helping you, they're probably helping themselves a little bit. She's a more obvious example of someone who might be in this position, but that's not a bad thing. It's just the way the game is played, right? And I love making matches, and so I always seek out opportunities to connect folks. So if I know somebody that's a good fit for you, I'm going to be excited about introducing you. And so as a result, I don't mind fielding questions on the subject. This goes to both networking and co-founder outreach. Always have an elevator pitch ready. Doesn't matter what it is, and it's probably not going to be very good for a while. But have it, gauge feedback, and use that as an opportunity to evolve it. And also, if you happen to be using LinkedIn or you're using something else, in fact, LinkedIn forces the electronic intro, but craft out a paragraph or a few sentences that says, this is who I am and what we're doing, and this is what we're looking for. So if you contact me and say, hey, do you know anybody? I say, I do. I can just copy and paste it right out of your email, send an introduction, and be on my way. Be likable. Shouldn't have to be said, but after meeting 41 people in 3 months, come with a smile if you can. Also, express interest in what they're doing. I found that I would go to some meetings and I would be like, let's get down to business, and there was no connection. Even if the person on paper looked perfect, I never took the time to build the bridge, and it was a problem. So, so take time to hear what they're up to. The other thing about this is, it's going to get you thinking about the sort of intersections. One of you were talking about how when you first met, he was working on the city of Santa Rosa thing, or you were, and he was working on, and I bet that you blended the two, at least a little bit.
Absolutely.
So, if one of you were just gung-ho, the other one would have been like, I don't really need you to talk at me, and it would just have disintegrated. But even if you didn't end up working together, you would have gotten some ideas out of that that would have been beneficial. And I found this to really be true. Reciprocate. Just make sure that you're giving and receiving in the networking ecosystem, and close the loop. So if someone provides a referral to you and you go have coffee, let them know. Went and had coffee. We're going to have another meeting, or we're going to see what happens, or wasn't a great fit, but I appreciate the introduction. It was great getting together. And then invest time. So about once a quarter, I'll go back through all my networks in LinkedIn, and I'll send reach outs to people, just, hey, what's going on, what's new? And with LinkedIn, the great thing is they'll notify you when people change jobs or get promoted. You can just say, hey, nice job, congratulations. Just really to be part of the conversation. So, okay, so you go through the hustle, you get lucky, you find a co-founder, and okay, we want to work together. How's that going to work? What you really need to do is identify key criteria. Okay, these are the buckets that we're going to be working on. Who's going to do it? How valuable is it? And what are we going to attribute to that? I'll show you a table that I grabbed off the internet that illustrates this. I say vesting is a must, and I absolutely believe this. Does anyone not know what vesting is?
Explain it in this context.
Okay. Vesting means, let's say you and I decide to work together, and I say, I've got this idea, and you're going to come on and do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to give you 30% of the company, which means I'm going to have 70%. Now, I could give you 30%, and then you could shake and you could sign, and we're partners, and you walk out and you get hit by a bus, and you got 30% of the company. I'm kind of screwed, because I can't find a replacement and give another 30%, because then I'm cut in half, well, almost. And so what vesting does is it says, there's some percentage of the company, or some number of shares that you're going to get, but you're going to get them over a period of time, so you're going to earn into it. So standard startup vesting, if you're an employee in the Valley, tell me if this agrees with what you've said, is a 4-year vest with a 1-year cliff, which basically means if you get 1,000 shares, you're going to get those month by month over 48 months. But actually what's going to happen is the first 12 months, you're going to get none, but at 12 months, you're going to get that first year's bucket. So if they fire you at day 364, you get no equity. Now, I've used vesting for myself and for my co-founders, but because there's no cash compensation, I eliminated the 1-year cliff. I thought, you can't very well say, okay, work for me for nothing for 6 months and then get nothing out of it. Didn't seem equitable. So I used 4-year vesting, and I removed the cliff for myself and for my co-founder.
First one as well as the second one?
Indeed, yeah.
So the second one is no longer active in the company, but still has some shares?
The original one has 1.5% or whatever he vested into over a period of time.
Minimum.
Yeah.
So does vesting apply to you too?
It does, yeah. And I did this for a greedy reason too. I knew that if I went to raise money, whoever invests in me is going to say, you're all going to vest. And so for me, it was a little bit of a gain to say, oh yeah, sure, but we've already vested. Let's just continue what we've already got rather than starting from zero.
Yeah, it's a position of strength.
Yeah. So, and frankly, I wanted to be equitable because if I leave, then I walk out with, in my case, 70 or 80% of the company, then they're really just, it's done, and then nobody wins. So, so I vested as well. We actually did something, this might be a little in the weeds, called reverse vesting. So basically, vesting means you get one share, boom, 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 and you're getting shares. Reverse vesting means you get all the shares up front, but the company has the right to buy them back for nothing until you've earned through it. And so what that means is, if we were to raise money while we were reverse vesting, that we've got the voting rights of the shares, even though we don't have permanent ownership, until I've vested through. Happy to talk more about vesting. It's good fun. There's lots of good stuff on the internet I'm happy to point you to as well from a gentleman named Brad Feld. So if you're looking for good reading, Brad Feld has a great blog that covers a whole range of stuff. He's a venture capitalist out of Colorado. Another venture capitalist name is Fred Wilson. He is out of New York. By the way, these links are also on Ignite SSU, so if you go there, you can kind of get a whole bunch of links out. And there's a few others that I'd recommend. And there's, sorry, a few asides. We'll be posting some sample term sheets as well. Term sheets are what your investors will want to provide you with. Basically, it's the agreement. There's some groups that have made their term sheets public. We'll be adding those to Ignite SSU so you can see them soon. The big key is, once you find a co-founder, you need to be ready to have really hard conversations. So going back to that example, it feels like, okay, I'm going to give you 30%, you're worth 30, I'm worth 70, right, to the company. Well, in that example, that's exactly what it means. Not because you're worth less than I am as a human being or that your skills aren't needed. It's just the way that it is based on what skills and what capabilities the company needs. So this is something I found. If you're interested, I can give you the URL. There's some good stuff on SlideShare too if you're interested for sample business plans like Mint.com's business plan is up there, which is a very good example. Presentation, not prose. So in this case, it was a real simple, okay, so it was my idea. How much is that worth? Well, less than you think, as it turns out, but it's worth something. It also is potentially a signal that if it's my idea, I will have continued strategic innovation that might be unique, which is what I think is probably more interesting. Technology, so if you're actually building whatever it is that you're building, well, if you're building a physical product and you're looking to bring in a web developer, the value of that technology is not all that large because it's an e-commerce site, a marketing site, it's not your product. If you're in our case, our product is the electronic stuff, so it's bigger. Are you going to be the one out on the campaign trail trying to raise money? Are you trying to raise money? Obviously, leadership. Are you the CEO? Are you going to bring in a CEO? What is that structure going to look like as you evolve? And then sales and marketing. I think so often this is overlooked. Even if you're technical, you're going to be selling. At least yourself and your idea, if not the actual product for a while. So who's going to do what? And then you literally go down and say, okay, this is the relative value to the company that someone has to do. Founder 1, founder 2, you go straight across and you can sort of do the math. 59%, 41%. Little cut and dry from reality, but it's an idea of how to have that conversation. And obviously, if you've got a third or fourth founder, it adds another layer of complexity. But trying to quantify the unquantifiable is probably a useful exercise.
So, make sure I read it right. First line says weight 10. That's
Yeah.
the total
So
of that
the total
idea.
contribution is 10% to what needs to happen to be
Right.
successful.
And then it's split 5 and 5. Assuming you have just 2 founders, right?
Right, so you're here, you and I were having drinks and we come up with an idea.
Okay.
Kind of both of ours were splitting the
So
idea.
that's the 50-50 weight of that. And why is technology 30 times 10?
So 10 was just used as to say 100%. So this is the weight, and this is the percent. You could replace this with a percentage and say I'm going to be 100% the sales and marketing guy. You're going to be 100% the technology guy, or in this case 70-30. So you just have the weight times the percentage, and that gives you the breakdown.
So 10 is 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what about things like reserving a share of the company for future, like an options pool or something?
Yeah, which is a great question. That is outside the scope of this,
Right.
but what you would do, what we've done is, so we've got 10,000 shares. There is some extra cost in doing 10 million, but it's all just made up anyways, right?
Mhm.
10 million happens to be sort of the normal number of shares for a venture firm. And so we structured it so that we guessed at how many shares we'd have to give up to raise. So we've been bootstrapped for 3 years. We're just now starting to raise around. So we sort of guessed, well, I think we're going to give up around 150,000 shares, maybe 200, but it doesn't matter what the number is. You guess at what you're going to want to sell for an investor. And then we said, well, let's reserve 15%, so another 150,000 shares, for the option pool. So to bring in executives and to bring in folks. And so you've got that set aside, and then you go, okay, how do we split what remains among the founders?
Mhm.
So this applies just to the founder portion.
Okay, good. Okay.
And you don't have to reserve those early on, but if you raise money, they're going to come out. So it kind of doesn't really matter.
Because it's either going to hit you in the end, and someone, I think the thing that I would want to be careful of is sometimes you find a founder who doesn't understand the physics of financing,
Yeah.
and they go, oh, well, I got 40% of this company, but now we want to create an option pool. So suddenly that person's diluted.
32% or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then they go, wait, I signed up for 40%.
Yeah.
So these kinds of conversations are probably a little important to have
Yeah.
at the time when we're talking about these kinds of things.
Absolutely. It's a relative ownership relative to the founders.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard cases also where they divided up the full pie,
Mm.
then everybody got diluted as
Exactly. Exactly. In our case, I just opted to pre-dilute so that my co-founder would understand what the implications are, and again, so that if we go to raise money, I could try to force it into the numbers that I wanted. And obviously, you have to deliver to that point to be able to justify that. And it may turn out that our valuation's higher than I thought, and I was like, oh, great. Well, we're going to raise, and we're going to have these extra shares, and we'll just structure it to where those get redivided kind of pro rata according to the founders. So there's lots of sort of complicating things you could do around if you're fundraising, if you're doing an equity pool. Complicated in the sense that you have lots of leeway. Uncomplicated in the sense that if you can get sort of this right, that other stuff is easy because it's just, okay, as long as you realize, okay, we're selling 10% of the company, each of us have 10% less than what we had to start with.
Right.
Where does startup cash come into your criteria? It doesn't
That's a good
seem
question.
that
I've
high.
never been in a position where a founder brought startup cash to the table, but
Well, how do you do anything without cash? You need some kind of.
Yeah. Some operating.
you would be surprised. But that's a good point. So part of what this also leads to is a conversation around what is the value of the company today? We haven't done anything. But there's this sort of potential value if we decide to take that first step. Okay, so if I bring $10,000 into this equation, well, okay, so how valuable is that $10,000? So basically what you're saying is you're setting a valuation for the company right when the investors step in, right when the entrepreneurs get together. So I think in some ways that really complicates things if you have one investor, one founder who's also a financial investor and one who's not. Because, well, if you're the one that's not, well, whoever's not, all of a sudden, if they start to slack off, the one who is going to feel like, okay, I'm working and I'm putting money in. So I think it greatly complicates things. But at the same time, if you can come back to some sort of weighting here, to where you add a line that says cash, and you go, okay, that's 5 or 10, and you just break it down and say, okay, well, I've got 100% of the cash, so I get an extra 5% of the company based on how this all works out. Dealing with when you get a month or two down the road and you hit your first speed bump and you go, wow, how are the two of us going to work together to get past this? Because I thought I was going to sell $50,000 worth of stuff and I've got 2 prospects. It's going to be challenging if you go that route, but it might be the only option you have.
And this works for a service company,
Oh, absolutely.
but it might not be the same kind of thing that would work if you're manufacturing a product.
That's right.
Because
So
you need cash to begin with.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And
That's
the
what I was
variables,
referring to.
the variables will change depending on your particular situation. So, if you've got, in your case, you might have, IP law as a thing that goes in here, and that's a big, important value. Actually, it's not that much. But it'll vary dramatically depending on what you do. Although, Kickstarter has this interesting element where I've seen some products that people have built a prototype, and they basically said, oh, you donate so much money, and it's kind of the PBS model. Well, if you donate this much, you're going to get a product. You donate this much, you're going to get a signed product. You donate this, and so they basically fund it before they have it. Doesn't work for everything. You're trying to build an electric car. It's a lot of people that have to write really big checks to give them something of
We
value.
actually have a strategy we worked out, which we're going to submit to see.
Give them Matchbox cars for people who get a small amount.
Kits. We're breaking the car into kits.
Awesome.
So it becomes easier to enter in.
And it's a hobby, and it's all of that sort of. It pulls in different. I dig it.
Right.
So we're out of time. Definitely use the web. You'll be shocked about how much people have talked about this. And there's a lot of what I put together was based on my experience, but a lot based on what I've read. If you want sort of the longer version, you can definitely find it. Depending on the type of co-founder you're looking for, you can find lots of good stuff. There's sort of this running joke around finding the technical co-founder for the web that the business founders are completely morons and they have no idea how to talk. And it's like, oh, I'm looking for either an intern or a co-founder. And oh, what are you kind of communicating when you put that out there? And so there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek and very good stuff out there. Again, shameless plug, but I think you'll find it valuable. Ignite SSU has a lot of links out, and we'll be continuing to add that. So if, as you're sort of on your journeys, you're saying, I wish there was more resources around X, Y, or Z available, let me know, which I'm contactable through here, and I'm happy to pass out some cards. Because we've got a bunch of stuff we're sort of working through the pile, so hopefully we can curate the best of the web and make it easier for you to find online and interact with each other.
Good question. Why is it .com and not .edu if it's associated with university?
Yeah, it's a big question. I wanted to work outside the university so that I could ask for forgiveness. Universities are fraught with bureaucracy and stumbling blocks, and I didn't want to deal with it.
So is this your brainchild? You started this up?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thank you. So that is all. Any other questions I can answer, or?
Will you be circulating something with everybody's name and email on it?
Oh, that
You
is
said
a
everybody
great
should
idea.
join LinkedIn together.
That is a great idea. Let's see, what's the
Carrie
best
would
way
have
to do
that
this?
information.
I have a pad if you want to pass it around.
Oh, did you all like
We
pre-register?
all signed
Yeah.
up in the front, so.
Carrie,
okay, so-
Carrie has it all.
Okay, so I will send out an email. I will also invite you to join Ignite SSU in case you don't already, using your email address. And then hopefully you guys have some time to stick around and talk if you saw someone during the introduction that you think there's a fit for.
Thanks, Brian.